Welcome back, once again adventurers, to Let's Play Steins Gate Zero. In the last episode, Rintaro, Daru and Maho were being held hostage by Moe Kurisu and the CERN Rounders, when, completely out of nowhere, a bunch of armed military soldiers appeared. They weren't Stratfor, and they weren't Derpa. They were the Russian Federation, who not only took out two of the Rounders, but completely obliterated Kurisu Makase's laptop and hard drive in what can only be described as the ultimate showdown of Ultimate Destiny, and I doubt that even Mr. Rogers himself could have stood up to them whatsoever. Fortunately, however, Rintaro, Daru and Maho were not their intended targets, surprisingly enough. And the Russians basically left them to fend for themselves. And of course, Akihabara is in complete panic as to the situation, but finally made it back to the Future Gadget Lab. And by the way, since we're here, and the lights are on in the Brawn Tube workshop, I have something to tell you, Mr. Brawn. You can kiss your rent goodbye, because we are not paying a single cent. Screw you, Mr. Brawn, we're done. Your actions are a violation of our lease agreement. You can piss off with that. Good day, sir. And he will probably beat the living hell out of us, but I don't care anymore. It hadn't been that long since we were attacked in the hotel. If the cops found us at the scene of another crime like that, they'd be suspicious for sure. Unfortunately, we're not actually exactly safe in the Future Gadget Laboratory either, with Tanuji having set up shop below us. So we ran before the police arrived. Suzuha wasn't at the lab. That's unfortunate. Maybe she sensed what was going on outside and went to check on the time machine. That's actually a good call on her part. I take back what I just said. We held our breath and waited. Tanuji, you are not getting your rent. I felt like if we let anyone know we were here, more scary people would burst down the door and charge in, as what happened in the Alpha World line.
橋田さん、ここタオルって置いてある。
We really need to get our security checked. By the way, not that it will help us in this situation. Maho nodded and brought a new towel from the washroom. She handed it to me.
首、血が出てる。これで押さえて。
But by the way, Rintaro was stabbed in the neck with a knife.
ありがとう。
My neck was wet with blood. Fortunately, it wasn't a deep wound, so it wasn't long before it stopped. After handing me the towel, Maho sat down on the floor and didn't move. I think I can guess the source of her melancholia at this point. She wanted to see what Kurisu had stored on her laptop and hard drive, but now she will never get the chance. I knew how she felt, especially since this was the second time she'd been attacked. And this time, people had died right in front of her.
大丈夫か、比叡城さん。
I seriously doubt any of us could ever be considered okay. And yet Maho was putting up a very brave front. She nodded, hesitantly, but her face was deathly pale. And I realized that she'd been clutching her left hand into a fist this whole time, and there was blood coming out of it.
怪我したのか見せて
Maybe she injured herself on the asphalt. And yet she doesn't seem to realize that she's bleeding. Evidently she hadn't noticed she's been hurt. She seems very much in shock. Not that I blame her. She was looking at her left hand, confused.
あら、
どうした
指開かない。変ね。
Seems like the motor functions in her hand are damaged. Maho had been holding some small fragment in her left hand. Her hand had frozen around it and wouldn't move. Soon it started to shake. I grabbed her hand and forced her to open her fingers one by one. Whatever it was, she'd been clutching at it so tightly that she'd cut off the blood flow to her fingers. They were very cold. When I finally forced her hand open, the thing she was holding fell to the floor. What was it? I picked it up.
Oh.
Now I understand. It was a red piece of magnesium alloy. It was a piece of Kurisu's laptop. She must have grabbed it off the ground when she was running away. If she held something like this so tightly... Oh, sorry, let me reread this. If she held something so sharp, tightly for so long, of course she was going to bleed. It is a piece of fragmented metal after all. And yet she couldn't bear to let go of the memory of Kurisu Makase. I returned it to Maho without a word. It did belong to Kurisu in her life. She took the broken fragment and cradled it in her hands, then stared with it with an empty expression. Suddenly, a single line of tears dripped down her cheek. Well, we originally planned to erase the information on the laptop and hard drive by getting rid of it ourselves, but what just transpired was not entirely what we had in mind at all. But I don't think Maho is crying simply because of what just happened. She is crying because now she has lost the opportunity to see that information with her own eyes, once and for all. After that, it didn't stop. She continued to sob. It seems that the only link that Maho has to Kurisu Makase now is the artificial intelligence Amadeus.
ごめんね。守ってあげられなくて。ごめんね。
Unfortunately, Maho has lost her other link to Kurisu Makase. It was as if that tiny fragment was Kurisu herself. She held it to her chest and kept crying.
いや、ジョーさん
I don't think there is anything we can do or say to comfort her in this situation.
きっとクリスは安心したと思う。
yet I don't think you're entirely wrong there.
君が無事でよかったって。
I'm sure she would be.
だから君が謝ることなんてない。謝らなくてもいいんだ。
Indeed, none of this was your fault. She didn't respond. Instead, a phone started to vibrate.
私
I'll let you take the call. Maho took out her cell phone and looked at the message she received.
レスキネン教授からだわ。
We haven't heard from you in a while. Not that I actually care for it. What has happened
どうした？
now?
荒らされたって。オフィスと、あとホテルの部屋、教授と私のひどいことになってるって。
Either that was the Russian military, or it could have also been Durpa.
そうか。
Whether it was the Rounders, the Russians, or whoever had first surrounded the cosplay shop, they must have been after Kurisu's laptop and hard drive.
あの PC バックアップは存在しないんだよな。
In other words, that information is forever beyond our reach.
それならこれでよかったんだ。
I was going to say the exact same thing, Rintaro.
クリ
You
スの
beat me
残
to
し
the
たものが
punch.
何十億もの人を殺す道具として使われることはなくなったんだから。
Indeed. Kurisu would have erased that information, that data herself, rather than let it be used for nefarious reasons. Just like she did on the Alphaworld line. But we are getting horrible flashbacks. But in the end, I got what I wanted. The data was destroyed before anyone got their hands on it. There was so little left that I was sure that there was no way to restore it. And yet it came at too high a cost.
つうかさ、ロシアはなんであの PC を壊しちゃったんだろう。手に入れようとしてたんじゃなかったん？
They probably think they already do have their hands on it, thanks to Nakabashi. However, what they have in their possession is a third-rate version of the time machine theory that they have inadvertently destroyed. But we don't need to tell them that.
タイムマシン開発競争じゃん。ロシアがリードしてるんだ。
In other words, if the world line keeps going the way it is now, the events that we inadvertently lived in the alternate world line will ultimately take place. That terrible, warlike future in which the Soviet Union is back in existence in the 21st century.
ノート PC を手に入れられればそれでよし。だが他の連中に奪われるぐらいなら壊してしまった方がマシって考えてたんじゃないか。
And that is exactly what they have done. They probably wanted to avoid a protracted gunfight with the Rounders in broad daylight in Japan, even though they would definitely win considering how armed and armored they were, and the fact that they actually had vans. The cold way they made their decisions made me shiver. They really were professional soldiers. An amateur couldn't do that.
で、これからどうする？
できればここにはいたくない。
Indeed, the future gadget lab, no. The city of Akihabara itself is no longer safe for any of us. Russia might not know about this plate, but Morika might. Indeed, I believe she does. If the Rounders were on the move, then Tanuji downstairs might be involved too. Looks like it's time to close up shop after all. It's been fun, Future Gadget Lab. But it is time to say
日が暮れ
farewell.
たら移動しよう。
It would have been great if Suza had come back, but I couldn't get in touch with her. And that's the way the cookie crumbles. And now we're shifting to Maho's perspective. Maho was sinking into a warm bathtub. She could finally feel blood flowing through her body again. The heat melted the tension away from her muscles. Her injured hand hurt a little, but it wasn't unbearable compared to the pain of seeing Kurisu's laptop obliterated right before her eyes. She felt like she'd come back to life, so to speak. Once the sun had set, Maho and Rintaro had gone to Faris, the cat had made of Queen Yan Yan, for help. At this moment in time, Faris's penthouse is the only safe haven in all of Akihabara. Faris's home was at the top of a high-rise condo building on prime Akihabara real estate. From a security perspective, it was superior to the Future Gadget Lab in every way imaginable. No point in staying in enemy territory. Faris welcomed the two of them, offering them food and a place to sleep. And now she'd even offered them a bath. Probably courtesy of Kuroki. Maho was a little worried about Itaru Hashida. He'd insisted on staying to wait for his younger sister Suzuha and remained alone at the Future Gadget Laboratory. Which is A, not a good idea, and B, Maho doesn't yet know the truth that Suzuha is not Daru's sister, but in fact his future daughter. Another thing that Rintaro has admitted to telling her. More than an hour had passed since then. Had Rintaro heard anything? And even if they'd moved, that didn't mean this place was safe. They may even have to abandon Japan altogether, and even that's a bit of a crapshoot. The group from this afternoon could attack any time. I don't think we have to worry about the Russians anymore, though. We are not their prime target. At least not now. But she couldn't help but feel nervous. That made her feel terrified and vulnerable as she sat naked in the bath. She got out of the bathtub and hurried to the changing room to wipe herself down. She tried to put on the change of underwear Faris had given her. Unfortunately, and her hands started to shake. Then her knees buckled and she fell to the ground. Looks like Maho is affected more by the tension and the shock than she would care to admit.
極度の緊張とそこからの急激な緩和で一時的にひどい筋弛緩が起こってる。
In other words, Maho Kyajo has basically lost control of her motor functions, which is not a good thing. She tried to stay calm by analyzing herself, but that didn't mean she could do anything but lie down.
これはまずいわ。
And if she can't move in this condition, that's going to be very bad indeed. Alarm bells were going off in her head. She's just about giving up, knowing that it would pass with time. And Faris popped in her head and... Yeah, just reminded of the fact that Japanese doors do not have locks in the slightest. I think we have a bit of a situation here, Faris. Faris screamed and started to panic when she saw Maho naked and lying on the floor. I think we're going to need Kuroki's help for this one. Get him to call an ambulance. Normally I would chalk this up to Faris' own Chinibu attitude. But in this very instance, she's not entirely wrong. If Maho is left in her condition as she is now, it is going to be very detrimental for her well-being later on.
いや、別に大丈夫だから。
I believe this situation is anything but fine, Maho. I think Faris is actually doing the right thing by actually doing something about it. Maho's voice, was so weak that Faris didn't even hear her.
とにかくベッドに連れてかなくちゃ。
Getting her to a sensible place to lie down is probably the best thing, but that's only the first step. Faris tried to pick up the naked Maho, and then slipped and dropped her. Yeah, that costume you're wearing right now isn't probably going to help. In fact, why are you still wearing those gloves? Maho hit the back of her head on the floor. Oh, no. Congratulations, Faris. You very well have given Maho a serious concussion. Congratulations, you've made the situation even worse. She saw little stars across her field of vision. Now is probably a good time to call Kuroki. I would be calling him right now. Sprawling naked on the floor, face up, Maho tried to force herself to stand, but her arms were too weak.
聞いて、これはすぐに治るから。
You still need to get to a place where you need to rest, and now you're going to need something for that splitting headache that you're going to have. But Faris wasn't listening. For some reason, she decided to reach around Maho from behind and drag her up. Probably a good idea to get a towel first. And then Rintaro must have heard Faris' scream because he ran in. Oh, Jesus.
どうしたんだ、フェイリス。
Well, I suppose it's a little too late to call Kuroki in this situation.
Oh.
Way to make a serious situation incredibly awkward. For everyone concerned. Good job, Faris. Avert thine eyes, Rintaro. She wanted to scream, but all that came out was a tiny whimper. I would say the situation is as worse as it could possibly be.
本当に悪かった。この通りだ。
Your heart was in the right place, Rintaro. You were entirely concerned for Maho's safety. Rintaro lowered his head deeply towards Maho as she lay on the bed.
謝らなくてもいいわ。さっきのはあくまでも事故なんだから。
That doesn't change the fact that you needed very serious medical attention. And you didn't really help all that much, Faris. But you still couldn't bear to look him in the face. I think the feeling is probably mutual there. Just remembering the despair and embarrassment she'd felt when he saw her naked body made her want to bury her head in a pillow and flail her legs back and forth. If she still had her motor functions, which I'm pretty sure she doesn't. To make matters worse, she still hadn't been able to stand up after all that, and Rintaro had been forced to carry her to the bed. Where is Kuroki in all this? I want to know. And why didn't Faris call... Is he even here? I wish he is. I certainly hope she is. She'd never been touched by a boy before, and so it was only today that she realized how rugged male arms are. Being carried was extremely uncomfortable, to the point where she'd squirmed around and almost slipped out of his arms. So she had no choice but to curl herself up into a ball and let Rintaro do whatever he wanted with her. I don't think he wanted to do anything to you, Maho, which made it really strange. Also, did neither of you think to actually use a towel to save her dignity? And now she couldn't even bear to look at his face. The situation is so wrong on so many levels. So what happens when common sense does not prevail? Unfortunately.
にゃー。フェリスが慌てたのがいけなかったんだにゃ。
In your defense, Faris, you were right to panic, but your methods at alleviating the situation didn't help matters at all. Faris was sitting next to Rintaro, feet under her knees with her shoulders slumped.
いいのよ。むしろ驚かせてしまってごめんなさい。
At least Maho can rest in peace. Safely.
体は平気なのか？病院に行かなくても。
Hopefully you don't have a concussion.
強い緊張が続いていたから、その反動が来ただけ。もう少し心配かけてしまったわね。みっともないわ。
みっともないもんか。今日みたいなことに巻き込まれれば誰だって怖い。具合だって悪くもなる。
I would definitely call that remark a bullseye there, Rintaro. You should be a dart player.
あなたでも怖い？
Especially Rintaro.
ああ。
そう。
I could tell by the haunted look in his eyes that he still carries with him.
今夜はもう休むといいにゃ。事件のこととか、これからどうするかとか、難しい話は元気になってから考えるといいにゃ。
That's definitely for the best.
そうね。ええ、そうするわ。
And now is probably a good time to let Maho recuperate from the
ありがと
ordeal.
う。
And Maho closes her eyes and goes to sleep. Maho closes her eyes. Or closed her eyes, I should say, but she hasn't gone to sleep yet. The lights went out and Rintaro and Faris left the room. Seems like She's not entirely over this ordeal. She lay on the bed and tried not to think about anything. She could hear the pounding of her heart. It would get louder and then softer. The rhythm was very strange, and she could hear a kind of static noise mixed in with her heartbeat, like a broken TV. Was it exhaustion-induced tinnitus? Whatever it was, once she noticed it, she couldn't sleep.
そういえば、岡部さんが精神安定剤を服用しているって言ってたわね。
More specifically, anxiety medication, but I suppose he could be taking tranquilizers as well. She wasn't supposed to do this, but if she looked at their ingredients, she could tell what medications had what effect. Should she take a look and have him lend her some? If that wasn't possible, she could at least get some over-the-counter antihistamines to use as a sleep aid. She turned over.
大声を出さないで、言うことを聞いて。さもないと、命はない。
I think you can kiss your acquaintance with Maho Hyajo goodbye, Moeka Kiryu. Now you've seen her true face. Suddenly she heard a voice break through the unpleasant noise. She gulped and leapt out of bed. Terror-stricken, Maho tried to crawl to the door, but her legs wouldn't move like she wanted to. She couldn't stand up. The voice in her ears followed her wherever she went. It was like a wild animal, toying with its prey. All of the hairs on her body were standing up on end. Her jaw was chattering so hard that she bit her tongue. She desperately crawled across the carpet and towards the door.
一人殺してみせればいい。やめて、やだ、や。
Fortunately, Maho is only having a nightmare. Unfortunately, Maho is having a nightmare.
Hiyajo-san! Oi!
She woke up to find herself being violently shaken by the shoulders. She looked around the room, panting. She was in bed, and Rintaro was looking down at her. Her whole body was sweaty, and she felt sick. There was a burning sensation deep in her stomach.
どうした？
誰かがここに。
It seems like Maho has had her own share of trauma. Rintaro looked around. Faris came a moment later, as well as the older man who was her butler. But they were simply standing in the room at the entrance of the room, concerned. Where were you when we needed you, Kuroki?
きっと悪い夢を見たんだ。
I'm definitely sure that classifies as a nightmare, but fortunately Moeka isn't here. But Maho is still traumatized by the events of what has just transpired. The antique clock on the shelf said that at some point it had gotten past 1 a.m. She must have slept for hours without realizing it. At least she managed to get some sleep.
そうね、夢だったみたい。
This time, she took a painful breath and wiped the sweat off her forehead without realizing she sounded just like a little child. She sent Faris and the butler back to their rooms. Rintaro brought her a towel from the washroom.
ひどい汗だ。拭いた方がいい。
She did as he said and wiped off the beads of sweat off her face, chest, and limbs. As she was deciding whether or not to wipe off the inside of her pajamas, Rintaro took the hint and turned around.
俺も自分の部屋に戻るから、何かあったらいつでも声をかけてくれ。
At least Maho is fully clothed now, fortunately. However, it seems Maho doesn't want to be left alone in the dark, and I don't blame her.
橋田さんは
Daru is probably having his own episode at the moment.
ああ、さっき連絡が来たよ。鈴葉とも合流したって。
It seems like he's managed to reunite with Suzaha,
そう
which is a good thing.
それじゃ
A very good thing. Rintaro was about to leave her bedside, but Maho, and she couldn't believe she was doing this, reached out and grabbed the hem of his shirt without thinking.
お願い少しだけでいいから
She doesn't want to be left alone with her nightmares.
ここにいて
ひやちょうさん。
一人にしないで
Rintaro knows your pain better than you realize, Maho Yajo. What a terrible thing to have in common. Maho was surprised by the words she was saying, but the thought of spending this terrible night all by herself was too much for her. Rintaro must have understood how she felt, because he nodded without smiling. Indeed.
わかった。眠るまで一緒にいるよ。
He knows that pain all too well, and to some extent, so do I. But that story isn't really important at this venture.
ありがとうわがまま言ってごめんなさい
いや、いいんだ。どうせ俺もなかなか寝つけなかったし。
He says with clenched teeth.
後ろ向いてるから汗だけはちゃんと拭くといい。
But Rintaro does care for Maho's well-being,
ええ
and the well-being of all his friends. While Rintaro stared back at the door, she took off her pajamas and wiped off the thick layer of sweat that covered her whole body. She tried to put her pajamas on again, but they were too drenched for her to want to wear them. She had no choice but to dive back under the covers in nothing but her underwear and bring the comforter way up over her chest.
もういいわ
We can get you replacement pajamas if you wish. Amidst the dim glow of the nightlight, Rintaro brought a chair to the side of the bed and sat down.
ここで見張ってるから何も怖がらなくていい。これなら安心だろ。
I won't ever leave your side until we need to.
不安か？
大丈夫。
Maho once again trying to put up a brave front in the face of reality. Maho's face felt hot from some feeling she didn't understand. She sank deeper under the blanket and turned away from Rintaro. She softly closed her eyes. She could feel his presence behind her. The two of them stopped talking, and the only noise was the distant sounds of night coming from beyond the curtain. But it seems like she still can't sleep. How long did they spend like that? Just as she was about to fall into a light sleep, she heard a soft voice in her ears.
ヒヤジョーさん、まだ起きてるか？
ええ。
She felt herself waking up again. Seems like Rintaro has something that he wants to get off his chest. She opened her eyes and turned back towards Rintaro, only to see him staring towards the window. It was as if he was trying to see some sight that lay beyond it. His profile is so handsome. Handsome is probably not the word I would use. For some reason, that was the thought that came to her.
どうか
Might as well take the compliment, I guess. If indeed compliment it is. Rintaro seemed unwilling to talk, so Maho decided to speak first. He swallowed loudly.
本当はずっと言おうと思ってた。
Probably time to explain our connection to Moeka Kiryu from the Alpha World line.
けど勇気がなかった。
何のこと？
Let's just say that there's more to the story. A
俺
lot
は
more.
俺は一つだけ
一つだけ。
君に重大なことを隠している。
Maho leaned forward, not caring that he might see her chest.
さっ
She
き
should.
話したよな。別の世界線のことやそこで出会ったクリスのこと、タイムマシンやタイムリープのこと。
Seems we've told Maho that much.
ええ。
クリスとその父親のことも。
ええ。
あの時本当はもう一つ言わなきゃいけないことがあったんだ。でもどうしても言い出せなかった。
Something tells me that this is most unbearable for Rintaro Okabe. His head was slumping forward in the chair. Maho waited silently for his next words. Despite the late hour, she heard a helicopter in the distance. For some reason it sounded really loud. They tend to do that. She hadn't seen the news, but it was possible that the media was still taking pictures about the gun, was still talking about the gun battle that had taken place this afternoon.
これは君にだけは絶対に話すべきことだったのに。
Seems like Rintaro is finally ready to tell Maho everything. But I wonder if she'll be prepared for it. When he finally spoke, his expression was unlike any look she'd ever seen on his face before. It was pained, sad, and suffering, like someone at the bottom of a deep, dark place. And yet there was something in his eyes that hinted at incredible self-hatred and rage.
岡部さん。
I think it's time for you to know the whole truth. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Suddenly, her chest felt like it was about to burst from pain. She didn't know where the pain was coming from, but she wanted Rintaro to stop looking like that.
あの日ラジカンでクリスを
He's actually going through with it. His hands were forming some kind of shape, like he was holding an invisible knife. Invisible to Maho, but not to Rintaro.
クリスを殺したのは
もういいわ。
We know all too well. She screamed, unable to take it anymore. She rolled out of bed, forgetting how she was dressed, and covered Rintaro's hands with her own.
いいの、もういい。それ以上言わなくていいから。
But sadly he must, because if he doesn't, then he will live with the internal guilt and self-loathing of the fact that he is the one responsible for the death of Kurisu Makase. Not just the fact that he abandoned her in the Alpha World line, not just the fact that he had condemned her to her fated death on July 28th, but the fact that when he actually dared to go back in time and save her, that he was the one responsible for her demise. She died by his own two hands. But I wonder if Maho has finally figured that out.
私はあなたを信じているわ。だから話さなくていい。
As I just said, Maho, unless he gets this off his chest, unless he finally confesses to someone, he will never be free of the trauma and self-loathing
いつか
he carries with him.
その時が来たら嫌でも聞かせてもらうことになると思う。でもそれは今じゃない。
Seems that Rintaro is fated to carry his burden with him just a little longer.
その時が来るまでは口をつぐんでおきなさい。
Whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, I honestly cannot say. She strengthened her grip and forced him to let go of the invisible knife. The knife that took the life of Kurisu Makase. Rintaro nodded without saying another word. They simply stared at each other for a while. Maho couldn't look away from his gaze. It was as if he was clinging to something, or wandering in search of salvation. It seems like Maho has unfortunately caught a cold. That is never a good sign. She sneezed.
風邪ひくぞ。
Think we need to get you some new pajamas, Maho. And it was only then that she realized she was holding Rintaro's hand, or wearing next to nothing. Rintaro looked a little embarrassed.
ごめんなさい。
She quickly jumped back into the blankets. She curled up into a ball and tore at her hair, screaming inside her mind. She'd let a boy see her naked not once but twice. Definitely good to keep this little detail away from Amadeus Kurisu.
私、今度こそもう寝るわ。
I think the situation has alleviated to the point where you can actually finally get some sleep.
邪魔して悪かった。
邪魔だなんて思ってないわよ。でもさっきの話はこの場限りにしていい？
Wish. Your wish is my command.
いい？
あありがとう、ヒヤジョーさん。
お礼なんて言われる筋合いはないわ。それじゃあおやすみなさい。
おやすみ。
It's good night for me, and it's good night from them. Good night. The room got quiet again. The adrenaline rush kept Maho awake. After a while, she heard snores coming from Rintaro's direction. Evidently, she'd fallen asleep. He must have been tired. He went through the same attack that Maho had. Of course he was. His breathing wasn't peaceful at all. It was pained. He may have been in the grip of some terrible nightmare. If only you knew the truth of this, Maho Hiyajo. Maho hesitated several times, but finally she turned over and stretched her hand from the blankets. She softly touched the backside of his hand. She felt its warmth on her fingertips.
クリスはあなたのことをなんて呼んでいたのかしら。
Actually, it's not so much what Kurisu called Rintaro as what Rintaro called Kurisu, which is a lot of things. Assistant, Celeb Sev, a whole list of countless other names like Zombie, and finally last but by no means least, one of her the nickname with which she was most irritated with, Christina, the butchering of her name, Kurisu.
岡部さん。
In fact, come to think of it, there is one thing that Kurisu has never called Rintaro, and that is Rintaro. She's called him Okabe. Well, to be honest, she's never called him by Mayuri's nickname of Ocarine, And she's always referred to him by his full name, Rintaro Okabe, or Okabe Rintaro, in the Japanese dialect, but she's never once called him by his first name. Just a thing that I should be pointing out.
それとも
No, she definitely called him Okabe. In fact, she only called him Ho in Kyomo a few times at the height of his mania, but she only ever called him Okabe, never Rintaro. And that is most
凛
unfortunate.
太郎だったのかな
Sadly, she never called him Rintaro, and on this beta world line, she never will. And I doubt that Amadeus Kurisu would call him Rintaro either. She didn't know, but it didn't matter. Of course it doesn't.
しっかりしなさい岡部倫太郎この私が好きになった人はそんなに弱い男だったわけ
She tried to think about how Kurisu would say those words. And eventually, Rintaro's breathing started to become more peaceful. Relieved, she let go. And then she changed her mind and grabbed the hem of his shirt again. She felt embarrassed, as if she was a little kid, but at the same time, she felt like now she might not have any more nightmares, which is always a good thing. A very good thing indeed. That night, for the first time in a long while, she dreamed of a smiling Kurisu, the one that she had known in Victochondria, smiling happily at her. And we wake up in the morning with Rintaro's perspective, and it is a bright, sunny day. Maho and I stayed at Faris's house for several days after that. And I shall leave this episode here for the time being. When we return, adventurers, we shall see what this brand new day has to offer, and what our next plan of attack is as well, and our plan of action. As always, until next we meet.